Beautiful Game Network. I am Mike. With me is Josh, Kev, and the Hounds' new sporting director, Dan Visser. Dan, thanks for joining us again. Last time you were here, you were a coach, but now you're sporting director, so that's cool. Congrats
That
on
is cool.
the, I guess, promotion. Would you consider a promotion?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
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 I think so too. We had a whole list of questions. We're just gonna tear these up because, like I said, you've been Mr. Popular recently, and you've been everywhere talking about this role, which is fantastic. I guess before we even get started, obviously today is Bob Lilly and Riverhounds Day. You were at the ceremony at the city building. How was that? What was that experience like?
It was cool. I mean, it was a well-deserved honor for Bob. I think it was a well-deserved honor for the team. It's it's cool. I mean, it's cool to get that recognition. It makes me a little bit happy that I'm not involved in politics or just like the pageantry of the standing up and sitting down and everybody saying lots of nice things and just taking a while and all these kinds of things. But to do it for one morning, it was a fun occasion.
I saw that Bob was behind the podium. Question: was his speech longer or shorter than his post-game speeches?
It wasn't real long, and he didn't know it was coming either. So it was a little bit of a surprise from Matt Grubba, if I can throw his name out there. Bob doesn't love to be recognized individually. He wants it to be about the team, but as I said before, I think it's well deserved from him and his. The role that he's played in the 6 years that he's been here.
I was going to say, I'm sure Bob absolutely loved all that attention.
Maybe secretly, sure. I think we all do a little bit, but yeah.
Listen, but before we get too deep into it, too, I mean, obviously it's Thanksgiving week. You have a family. Are you guys gearing up for Thanksgiving? You ready?
Sure. Yeah, it'll be pretty low key. I just spend some time with my in-laws. My wife is going to go hunting, which is her second time doing that. She's not. She tried last year, went out for a little bit, and she'll try again this year. So it's not really part of what I grew up with, but it is part of what she grew up with. So she's going to go out with her dad. So that's the plan.
That was going to be my question. I'm in a similar situation where there are lots of traditions I did not grow up with that my wife's family did, and that sort of puts me in a bit of a pickle.
Yeah.
But good for her for giving it a go.
Yeah.
So I guess first. Biggest question I feel like that all of us had when we found out about this, like last year when we talked to you, you seemed to be on a track to become possibly a head coach at some point. And then we did not see sporting director becoming, in your in your future. Was this like your idea? Was this something that just popped up and you took the opportunity? Like, how did this come about?
Yeah, so definitely not like a supernatural progression to go from assistant coach to sporting director. I think that it's probably two things happening at the same time and then coming together. So my piece of it was just kind of wanting a new challenge. I've done different things. Bob's kind of given me different roles and I've kind of just taken some different roles and some different roles and responsibilities behind the scenes to do some different stuff out of my own interest. And I've been probably honestly eyeing this idea of like sporting director for a few years. And so, but there wasn't really that position at the Riverhounds. And so then, it kind of just was what it was. And I went to Bob kind of in our postseason meeting and just said, hey, I'd like to do something a little bit different. And, he spoke with Tuffy and then kind of unbeknownst to me, he and Jeff Garner behind the scenes had been thinking that they wanted somebody in this role, but they didn't want to just kind of hire anybody. They wanted somebody that knew the ins and the outs of the organization. And so, and I think unbeknownst to them, or certainly unbeknownst to Jeff, because I had the conversation with him, he kind of thought the same thing, that I was on very much a coaching track, which is certainly fair. But he didn't know that I would have interest in something like this. So I think two things were kind of happening simultaneously. And once I kind of vocalized it, we put the pieces together, and I think it seemed to make sense.
Real quick, like as you said you sort of brought this to Bob. What is it that you recognize within the organization that was almost like a void that needed to be filled? What were you identifying and saying like, yeah, I want to step into this?
Yeah. So when I say I brought it forward, I didn't, and we even had the conversation because I said I'd like to do something a little bit different. But, and he kind of challenged me with what that meant, and what that vision was. And my response was really just that didn't totally know, because it obviously was going to involve other people. I can't just totally write my own ticket and say these are all the things that I want to do. It was going to need to be a larger conversation with him, with Jeff, with Tuffy, and I just kind of wanted to start the conversation and start exploring it. So it wasn't really me coming and saying I want to do this specific thing. It was more just starting the conversation to say that I'd like I'd like to do something a bit different. I'd like to do something more on the front office side. And like I said, this was probably a role that more was created by Tuffy and Jeff. And then I kind of just slotted into it.
So first hard-hitting question here. In the video with the Hounds, you mentioned that your son was really disappointed that you were no longer a coach. Has he forgiven you?
I think so. So, and to just touch on more dynamics to that story, it started because I had practiced with my son's team at 5:30, and I was, usually I can get home and grab him before we go. But this day, I'm like, hey, call my wife. Hey, I'm just going to head straight to the field, kind of a thing. Can you grab my shoes for me? Because I had like nicer sneakers. We were planning to be in the mud, and I wanted some muddier sneakers. So she comes by taking my son Kobe, and brings me the shoes, but Kobe doesn't get out of the car. So that was kind of the start of it. And I don't know what's going on at that point. And the other kids are asking what's going on with them. And I just tell them very honestly, like, I don't know. It wasn't until after the practice that we get in the car. I'm like, hey man, like, what was that? What's going on? And then he told me, but I think honestly, like you mentioned, I've been a lot of places the last few days. I spent kind of 8 years behind the scenes, and then all of a sudden, like the last couple of days, it's been a little bit or a lot less behind the scenes and a little bit more in front. And so I've actually shown him like texts and I'm like, look, like people are saying nice things about me. Like other people think this is cool. It's okay for you to think this is cool as well. So I think they're all good now.
So getting into the roles that you now have as sporting director, maybe if you can educate us a little bit, because I think sporting director is a pretty, I would say, a relatively modern position in soccer clubs around the world. I don't know if it's a position that necessarily existed, say, 20, 25 years ago. And so I think we as fans are kind of still learning what the roles and responsibilities are. As far as I can tell, managers might kind of come and go with a bit more frequency, and managers might, handle practices and picking starting 11s and everything. But sporting directors kind of maintain a more long-term vision, a long-term kind of stability around the club about, club values, club culture, club style, things like that. One, is that true? And two, I guess, how do you kind of see the future of the Riverhounds club in your vision of a sporting director?
Yeah, I think that, I honestly probably couldn't go into like the history of sporting directors and when that's originated and all these kinds of things. I have looked around. As I mentioned, it's been something that's been on my mind for a little while. So certainly over the last 3 to 5 years, kind of just poking around. There's somebody on Twitter I follow that like highlights sporting directors. I've been following him for about 3 years or so. And so, I think that it probably looks different in every club. I think that it's also, it goes by other names. And I think that probably, whether it's a director of sport, and that's pretty much the same name, but something like technical director, there may be some overlap with those types of things. So, I think probably in the traditional American sports, it's more like the GM, where they're kind of signing the team. But obviously that takes different forms in different teams as well. Like how involved is the coach? Is the coach just kind of, coaching the players that are given to him, or, is he an active part in signing the team? And then the big difference within our club is that we've got the whole academy piece. So, if you're talking about the general manager of, say, the Pittsburgh Steelers, well, there's not a Steelers academy to kind of oversee. So that's really what I would say my function will be and is to most broadly to kind of oversee the soccer programming, both on the pro side and the academy side. But then I think a lot of what I intend to do and want to do is to serve as a link between all the different parts. So between the front office and the first team, between the front office and the academy, between the academy and the first team, and really just to kind of link a lot of those different pieces. When you're when you're smaller, it's probably less necessary. I think as we've grown, I think to have that position becomes more necessary. So yeah, that's kind of a broad overview of what I'll be looking to do.
I can just say too, you can add my voice to the people saying that this is cool for your son. Like,
Oh,
I think
yeah.
this is a cool position.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit about sort of the bridging the gap with the academy, and just something I was curious about. We've seen it in other USL teams. We've seen it in European teams where you sometimes have clubs that will sort of enforce a particular playing style so that it's easier for kids to bridge from the academy to the pro team, because you're almost just like taking one piece of the puzzle from the academy and they just plug in perfectly to the pro team.
Yeah.
In your mind, is that something that you think would be suitable for Pittsburgh, or is it more of a wait and see how things develop kind of thing?
Yeah, what I'd say is it's not like it's certainly not like an early objective for me. Like I think that's an interesting question to think about, not even like in this role as sporting director, but just as like a curiosity, like should this happen? I think that, you can look at like New York Red Bulls, I think are maybe certainly one of, if not the strongest example of an organization that has a very clear playing model that just runs all the way through all the different teams that they have. So whether that's, and they're broader than even just kind of a single club, in that it's not just like a Red Bull New York, it's Red Bull Leipzig and Red Bull Salzburg, and they've got a team in Brazil. And, I've not seen the team in Brazil, but like Leipzig, Salzburg, Red Bull New York 2, their academy teams, all those teams have a really defined playing model, and that runs through the organization. And they've got a sporting director that's kind of in charge of the whole thing. And I think that they've done a very good job to kind of create that from top to bottom. For us, I actually had conversations today with Scott Gibson about that. He and I we've known each other for a long time, but we've not known each other kind of in this capacity yet. And so this is kind of it was announced Friday. Monday was basically getting Rob up to speed. Tuesday, Wednesday was basically like the front office retreat. So it wasn't really till like Thursday, Friday. Today, half the day was spent at this city council thing. So like I'm like 2.5 days on the job and like trying to steal time with Scott. But we sat down and had a little bit of this conversation today, and it's interesting to think about, because forget Bob. Bob's obviously been long tenured here, but like head coaches can sometimes come and go. So then what does that look like? Is the academy or the sporting director really dictating the playing style to the manager? That's an interesting one. Is it going vice versa, where the sporting or the manager or the head coach is dictating to the academy? Well, now if he's only there for a couple years, which we see that all the time, then now you've got an entire academy that's changing their philosophy every 2, 3, 4, 5 years, whatever it may be. That's difficult, because it's not just changing one team. You've got to re-educate a whole staff of coaches. And so I think for the time being, there's maybe some things that we can do a better job of in terms of integrating the two. And I don't think it's something like a specific formation that needs to be played, but there are some principles that I think can bleed down through the academy. And like I said, I've not had that sit down conversation with Scott, but it's something that I think is certainly worth exploring.
Have you had the sit down conversation with Bob, and like how's that dynamic changing now between you and Bob? Because it is kind of weird that it's like going from assistant coach to Bob. Now you're essentially, I don't want to say his boss, because you're not, but you're
made that
in a
joke.
different
That
position.
joke's been made, right? Like it's fine. No, I think the only way that something like that works is when there's a relationship that's as good as it is between the two of us. And so, I think that he and I worked together for 6 years, and certainly I think right away he brought me into right away I had a seat at the table. So that was like day one. With Bob, it's kind of like you're kind of in or you're not in, and when you're in, you're really all the way in. And so I had a seat at the table from day one. But I think over the 6 years, my role and involvement grew, and that was both a product of me growing, but then it's also a product of him trusting me more. And so I'd say over the last few years, like I've been involved in really every player decision that's been made. And I think we can continue to have a lot of those same conversations now, like in this role. Things will change, I'm sure, but I think a little bit of that's to be determined. I like I said, I've been on the job for about 2.5 days, and a lot of that focus has been on just kind of figuring out the academy more so than anything else, just because I'm more familiar with what's going on with the first team. But yeah.
So curious, you said you had a conversation with Vincent. Like, what was that like? Was there like a piece of information you gave him, being like, "This is how to handle Bob," or like work with Bob better, like anything
No,
like that?
it was. I mean, we'll continue to have conversations. Like I'm just we legitimately just switched offices. So he took my office, I took his office. So I'm like he was upstairs, now I'm upstairs. So we're very close by. I told Bushy makes coffee every morning, and I said I'm going to keep getting my coffee here. So we'll continue to have some of those casual conversations. But I mean, in that particular conversation, that particular day, it was more like, here's what's going on with our combines, and here's kind of my advice to you towards kind of how to build that out, or like this is what I would focus on. Like basically, like at the moment, I'm probably doing less proactive reaching out to college coaches, and I'm like, why don't you take this piece of it? You be more proactive reaching out to the college coaches. People that I have relationships with will continue to reach out to me. Agents will continue to reach out to me. Bob has his own thing. Bushy has his own thing. But kind of some of the just very general fishing is a bit of what I said, here, why don't you tackle this project? So, and he's got his own contacts. So he's already kind of hit them up pretty early. But then you're also hitting up people that you don't know and forming some of those relationships.
I think it's awesome that, you keep saying you've sort of been in the job for 2.5 days, but the fact that because you've been here for so long and you guys already have those connections, you're not missing a beat. Like you're just diving right in and working things. I am curious, something that we talked about, maybe it was the last episode, but you're now obviously the sporting director. How do you assess sort of the 2023 season, and how does that impact how you approach 2024? I know when we lost in the first round, I was very conflicted because I was like, we just had this amazing season. We just won, the league shield. We beat, multiple MLS teams. Like, what else do you really, it's the playoffs. Like it happens. Right. So we put out the question on Twitter where I said on the show, and then I was like, is this legit? I said, if you could guarantee me that we win the Shield the next 5 years, but we go out the first round in the playoffs, would you take it? Because in my mind, I'm like, that's an amazing season. That means we're winning a bunch of games. We're having a lot of success on the field. And I shouldn't have been surprised, but everyone was like, nope, we want to win the cup. But from your perspective as a coach, how do you sort of, deal with that conflict? Like, do you see it as a success and it's just a blip, or is it like, we got to do something completely different here?
Yeah. I saw you post that. I don't think I answered, but I thought about answering, and I would have said the same as the majority of the people, which was no, I wouldn't, okay. I wouldn't choose 5 player shields to win or whatever it is. Like, I think the goal is to win a championship, to win a playoff championship. So, I think that you're conflicted. I think I'm also a bit conflicted. I think we're all a bit conflicted, especially when you start to see, all the stuff that's come out in the last week or so with, Dikwa. We obviously knew he had the golden boot, but he's also the league MVP. We see that Arturo is first team, or sorry, more so than even first team. He's the defensive player of the year. Bob's the coach of the year. Kenny gets second team all league. We do finish with the best overall record. So, that's a pretty ridiculous season in a lot of ways. And then you throw the Open Cup on top of that. So, Krasinski asked me this question, and you guys may have listened to that episode a little bit, and I'm kind of dissecting it a little bit as I talk to him. Like the Players' Shield is an award and something to be celebrated in its own right. But it's also, if your goal is to win a championship, then you want to take the first, whatever it is, 9 months of the season to give yourself the best possible chance. So to give yourself the best possible chance, you want to finish in first, because that means you get all home games, and that means that you get to play the 8 seed and you're, whatever. So in a lot of ways, we took 8 months and gave ourselves the best possible chance to win the championship. Obviously it didn't happen, but like, what should we have done differently over those 9 months? That's hard to really say, because not only did we set ourselves up in terms of home games, in terms of playing the 8 seed, but like we were also super healthy. So, and I think we were healthy. We were also like fresh. It's not like it felt like a tired group that was limping into the playoffs. Like things felt good. So, and then even in the playoff game, I think for sure we could have played better, but we did outshoot them. We did, like, there were some statistical advantage that we had in that game, and we give up a goal. And I don't know. I think sometimes maybe, and I've thought about this. I don't know what happens if we can get on the board and like win one or advance to the, win an Eastern Conference championship and advance to the finals and kind of just get the monkey off our back. Because I think belief is a big thing. It lets you know that it's possible and it's not just reserved, and there's nothing magical out there that goes into that. Like it's still the everyday. And then you also understand that it requires work. So winning it maybe just like teaches you those two things. And maybe those are the two things that we have to learn, that it can be done and that requires work are the two things.
Yeah. It's tricky. You mentioned here just a second ago about the fact that, we have Dikwa, we have Arturo, you have Lily, who got coach of the year. You're stepping into this role. Do you already have other teams that are trying to like kick down your door to get access to these guys, or you just like go away, or like what? It's a good problem to have, obviously, as the sporting director, to have all of this talent.
Right.
Just what are your thoughts as you sort of step into that position and know that you sort of have this wealth of skill that you're inheriting?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously some guys are free agents, so it's not really about other teams coming to us. Like those players get to explore that with their agents. And so, obviously these guys are priority targets for us, and Bob's been having those conversations. Those not conversations that I've been having with the agents to try to, return. So there's the different categories, right? Obviously there's some guys who we either have their option or they're just under contract for next year. So those guys are just kind of easy and obvious. But then the guys that are free agents, they're kind of a top priority right away to try to get those guys signed. And if, some of those guys may not sign right away on day one because they do want to explore different things. And so some of those guys we've got to be patient with and kind of let the process run its course, and we can continue to be as aggressive as we can. But, you're not going to force anybody to do anything. And it's a big world. And some of these guys aren't only exploring options in the United States, they're exploring options worldwide. And so, those are conversations that are being had, and we'll hope to return as many guys as possible.
You mentioned the 5-minute video that got put out earlier, and I think once or twice already, but around the discussion for like the academy and working with the academy and thinking about like the pipeline from the academy to the pro team and linking it as one kind of unified club. That seems like a really hard thing to do. I think it's been years, for the couple years we've talked about, gee, wouldn't it be great to like see a substantial amount of like academy players in the first team? But gee, that's hard, for a whole host of reasons, for how old they are, professional contracts, experience, maturity, and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. How do you think about the pipeline from youth academy to pro teams and kind of that whole kind of ecosystem linking together in a nice way?
Yeah. I do think it's hard. I think it's challenging. I think there's probably two ways to go about it. And I think you can see that we've done both of those things in the last 2-3 years. The first one, the most obvious one, is kind of like Anders. So Anders comes in as I don't know how old he was, a 9-year-old kid, and he comes up all the way through and signs with the first team. Obviously, not a massive impact on the field in terms of actually getting in games, but trained with us every day, and he belonged. Then I think the other model or the other example would be a Wyatt Bourseau. So Wyatt comes from Chicago Fire's Academy and comes out here, stays with the host family. And so he's not a guy that comes into our club at 9 years old. But I think that's a kind of another option, is to actually scout and recruit players from outside of the Pittsburgh market. And that's what other teams are doing as well. It's not that these clubs are taking everybody that have just kind of grown up in their local market and then turning them into pros. They're also going out and getting players from other markets and bringing them in at younger ages and then kind of taking the reins and developing them from there. But they're starting with kids that are a little farther along. So I think it's both of those things. Like I've said many times, like I've just kind of gotten started going on this, but I think, my head is spinning with ideas. I think that we've got a lot of people within our organization whose heads have been spinning with ideas as well. It'll be on me to kind of make those ideas a reality.
You had mentioned there briefly sort of it being a big world. And I think that when the press release came out that you have the position, the word international was thrown around a few times. I'm just curious how much you have thought about. We've seen a couple cases in the USL thus far where you have academy players that are coming up, they get their first year in the pro team, and then they're being sold off to foreign leagues or things like that. Has that aspect of the game, and I think what you said just now about even scouting and trying to just get kids into the academy, that's a whole nother piece of this. Like, would you see that as being something that you would take on yourself, or almost like you would need a team to sort of identify and like, is there a future in that for the Hounds?
Yeah, you mean just participating in the outgoing transfer market, like selling players and making money? I think for sure. We're talking about a lot of like really big things. And so it's kind of like, I sit there and I'm like, okay, what do we need? What do I go into the office, and now I've got just like these really kind of high end goals of like, let's win a championship. Let's try to bring an academy player forward into the first team. Let's try to continue to grow the academy. Let's try to participate in the so it's these big ideas. But that is definitely one I've even before it was like announced, I was interested just in what has our league done. And I know to an extent, but like, what have we actually done? So I go to transfer market and I print out all the players that have been sold and like, where have they been sold? How old have they been? Because it's not always just been young players either. Milan Olaski was just sold to a club. I forget where, Sweden, Norway, somewhere, Denmark, maybe. But he's like 25, I think. Can look back to Haji Berry. Haji Berry, I think, was sold to a team in Israel. I might have that wrong as well. But like, he was 29, I believe. So just to say, it's not always just the young players. There's others as well. And I think that probably the success of like our national team, but then the success of players like Pulisic and Tyler Adams and Brendan Aronson and some of these guys, that we kind of now, our league and our market in general, get to benefit from some of these guys' success, where clubs in Europe and in maybe South America or wherever look at our market and say, hey, that's somewhere that we can go get players from. So, yeah.
Switching the subject a little bit back to the first team. So other clubs are announcing players. Anything coming down here soon for us? Any announcements?
I think it'll happen soon. I spoke to Grubba today. We need to kind of get him a list, and he's gonna get that ready. I wouldn't expect it before Thanksgiving, but I would expect it, I think, probably before the end of the month deadline. So we have, I think, a November 30th deadline that we need to make those decisions. I'd expect something prior to then.
You can forward that list to us. That's fine.
Yeah. That's just the option, guys. So yeah.
One last question for you, Dan. We'll get you out of here because it's almost been a half hour, and we want to value your time here. Our friends over at Houndsy, they asked the question, and we figured we would just pass it along to you. But have you gotten any word? And again, 2.5 days in, have you gotten any word about whether or not? Obviously, we had massive attendance at the games last season. Do we know if the increase in attendance will at all impact the potential wage bill for players that you're looking to fill out the first team this year?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that's been a thing between, I mean, obviously I'll be more involved in it now in this role, but conversations between Tuffy and Bob, and Tuffy's always been willing to invest and ready to invest. And, it's kind of a little bit of we want to be smart with it. We want to continue to be smart with it. And I just know that Bob, having been around the block and having seen teams in all different various states of financial well-being, it's not easy to be in that position and to go and ask to spend a ton of money when the stands aren't, super full. So even just psychologically, like to feel empowered and to feel that it's a good decision to go spend, where you think you need to spend, it's easier to do that when you see that the stands are full, when you see that sponsorship dollars are coming in, and when everything just feels healthier. So forget kind of like an actual drop dead budget line number. It's just I think it makes more sense for us on the team side to spend when there's money coming in more kind of substantial ways and sustainable ways.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense.
Sorry, I have one last quick question. I thought I saw this on your
I've
Twitter
got
a
nowhere
while
to go.
ago.
I'm fine.
Good. I thought I saw this on your Twitter a while ago, and I went back and checked in the interview, and it's true. I saw you read a book that I really wanted to read. It was the Pep Linders Intensity book.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I haven't finished it, so I won't take credit for it. But
Okay.
I haven't finished it. But it's a very good book.
Any of the books, yeah. Okay. Cool.
It is. I mean, he sets out to write the book before they kind of go on this. I mean, that's kind of how it goes, right? If you're going to start to write a book or start a film series or whatever it might be, like you start to record the team, you don't know how the end of the season is going to go, right? So they just kind of, it coincides that he decides to write this book, and then they have this amazing season, Liverpool. But it's like a really awesome look into like real conversations that happen kind of in just an office environment. And so I could really relate to that. And it's pretty cool to see that, it's Pep Linders and it's Klopp, like having these just small conversations or little bits of banter between players or whatever it may be. And like, it's Liverpool, right? And it's like as big a club as there is in the world, but yet there's still people like we are. And they still, the players are still, same kind of age frame and, a player that's not playing is not always going to be super happy. And, so all these things were super relatable to me. So I thought it was a really good kind of pull back the curtain type of book.
Nice.
Well, Dan, as I mentioned, we really appreciate you coming on. We enjoyed talking to you last year. This was fantastic. Obviously this is a position that you're filling that we've been talking about for a while now. So we're super excited that you're stepping into it. We know that you're going to do everyone proud. So thank you again for joining us. Best of luck. Have a great Thanksgiving. And, maybe we'll talk again here soon.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the support and appreciate your guys' coverage. You guys enjoy your Thanksgiving as well. And I'm always up to coming on. So no worries there.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan.
Right. Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
See ya.
That was great.
Awesome.
Yeah. I really almost called him coach again there at the end. I had to stop myself. It's just the tendency is to call him coach.
King coach. That's what he is now. He sits
King
above it all.
Yeah.
He's in his ivory tower, and he just looks down upon his kingdom.
I bet you if Lily could have forced him to go up and accept the award on his behalf today, he probably would have had him do so. Yeah, I'm sure.
As King Coach, you have to accept all awards for the team.
Anything from the conversation that sort of, I don't want to say caught you guys by surprise, or anything that was like, wow, that, was interesting that you were sort of hearing for the first time? There was a lot that I was hearing for the first time, but like anything that really caught you?
I don't know. I thought it was interesting. It was one of the last points. It was on my mind. But
it was about the Liverpool book.
No, I'm not going to talk about that.
Ugh.
No, I thought his comment around, how spending, especially on players, can kind of coincide with, fans in the stadium. I think that's something that was like, a stupid half-baked idea that we would kind of toss around in podcasts, not being in a club environment, right? Not being actually like employed by a professional soccer club, and you're kind of just speculating about it. And to hear it kind of come from him saying like, no, that kind of does have an impact of how it just matches with like the trajectory of the club, and the trajectory of the club influences things, even like player signings, right? Of just more people in the stadium, more revenue coming in can allow you to do more things. And so, yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting.
It's like a prestige type thing. Like it's very much like, fake till you make it type of thing, where it's actually seeing the people in the stands, actually seeing the support the city's giving, makes you feel more emboldened to actually do that kind of thing. And my big surprise, not big surprise, but kind of surprise, was the whole thing about the championship. I find myself trying to logic my way to being oh yeah, the Players Shield is a much more substantial award because it means that we did good throughout the whole season and we're the number one team in the season. And really in other leagues, that would be the biggest prize. And like, that should be, what we're actually striving for. And I'm not saying we shouldn't strive for it, but I'm just saying like saying that to myself just to make myself feel better about not going far in the playoffs ever.
Yeah.
So it was nice to hear him being like, no, the goal is to win a championship. And like, that is what they're striving for. So that's pretty
It's
cool.
kind of interesting, like how he was talking about that too, where that's such a, like, I don't know, well-structured way to think about it, where I think he said like you do everything you can in the season to give yourself the best chance.
Yeah.
And like that makes a ton of sense, and down to, we didn't look tired, we didn't have injuries, we, kind of this like process driven approach of like, okay, just keep doing the right thing day in, day out. And then the result kind of takes care of itself. I mean, I think this is a little bit putting words in his mouth, but I think he kind of hinted and indicated potential, like the monkey off the back kind of thing. To me, those things kind of point to, okay, like mentality switches of, okay, like, we deserve to be in this place, and we are good enough to go this far, and then actually believing it, carrying through. It's a really hard thing to do when you've never done it before. So yeah, to nail all the kind of individual process moments, I think, it was a huge achievement. Yeah.
It's funny how much of what he's talking about, and it makes sense whenever, you're in it, how much of it is the psychological aspect of it. I think you have a lot of these players who athletically are pretty well even, but we ask about the money, and he talks about, well, psychologically, it's easier to go and ask for more money when the stadium's packed. And like, so there's that little bit. And even when you get to something like the playoffs, sure, you could be, the best team, you could be the most fit team, but psychologically there's still something you have to get over. And so for him to like acknowledge that and not just be like, nah, just got to brute force our way through it. Like, I think that's good. I think that it's little edges like that are going to get teams over the hump when compared to other teams that may be still, focusing on just formation or structure or whatever. So it'll be interesting to sort of see what happens here, as we go through the offseason and how that is potentially addressed. Is anyone else now more nervous that Dikwa and Ordonez are going to leave and go play international soccer?
As long as they don't go play for like Hartford or Legion, or like, I don't like, if they're leaving to go, above this league, hell yeah, I'm happy for them. That's awesome. It sucks because we lose them, but I am super happy for them. But I don't want to see a single one of these players going to Louisville, going to any, like, yeah, that would just break my heart, because if they're going to stay in this league, they need to be a Hound.
It was just funny how he started to talk about, oh, it's like international. And then he started talking about like, well, the players don't have to be young players to like go abroad and be sold. And like, in this case, I think both Arturo and Dikwa are free agents now. So like, it wouldn't even be like we could sell them for anything. They would just leave.
We don't have very many players that are not, or that are under contract this year.
Yeah, we have a bunch that are on options. But I think Hounsey was saying that Danny, like Griffin, is under contract.
I think he has the longest contract. Didn't like he come back and like, we're signing him for 4 years or something like that. I'm like, what?
Yeah. No, Dan's great. Yeah. We should just like, have him on every week. Just be like, what happened there?
He seems
Dan?
like he's gonna be pretty busy. Like,
I don't want that for our sporting director.
He gave that list of things that he's like, big, broad ideas that he has to deal with right now, and it's like, oh boy, you enjoy that.
Just to sort of throw more praise Hounsey's way, they did just have a show where they talked a little bit about the players that have options, and they sort of went through the whole mental exercise of like who they think is staying, who they think is going, all that. So I encourage you to listen to that. We're not going to rehash that right now. It sounds like in the next few weeks we'll have some sense of at least whose options are going to be picked up. So we'll sort of hear back from that, and then have conversations around that, guys. What else is going on? I feel like, how are, we just talked to Dan. We had a show immediately after this. Well, was it immediately? I can't remember how soon after it was the season ended. Josh, were you on that episode? I think you might've still been away. or were
Yeah,
you
it
here
was
for that?
fun. Have I been on an episode since the season ended?
I don't think so. So
Oh,
like
that's wild.
how are you guys like coping?
Yeah,
What have you been
bring this
doing?
pain
What have
back
you
up to
been
the surface, Josh.
No.
is the pain gone? Like is it
No.
washed away?
No, it feels like a void more than a pain right now because like leaving to go to Vegas and like being like, yeah, I'm gonna miss a playoff game. It's the first playoff game. It really sucks, but I can't like reschedule a freaking concert. And then thinking like, but it's the first one, and we have all home ones. Like it's gonna be there when I come back. And then it not being and just being like, oh, I just like missed the last game of the season and like everything. I was just like, okay, this sucks. Like this really blows. But yeah, more of a void. Anger at first because obviously this team I felt like should have been able to get the job done. I don't want to say deserved it because no team deserves anything. Like you have to earn it. So, but yeah, it was not
First stage
cool.
of grief.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and then you have the whole Everton thing coming in to just sort of keep washing over that. So you're
Yeah,
Why
you know,
did
it's
it do that
great. You
to
know, being mid-table team again was looking so cool. I was like, oh, we're actually going to be okay. 10-point deduction. What? Okay. So, yeah.
That was cold, Mike.
I asked what else has been going on. That obviously has been a big thing going on.
Toffee TV, one of the YouTube channels I follow for Everton, and watching their video, like they do a podcast and that kind of stuff, like a video podcast, and watching their video right after it happens. They're like very professional usually, and very much like you feel like you're watching like a sports TV, like a channel. They have a whole set and everything like that. And they're really top notch, right? And then watching that happen, and then like them just lose it and like just on air because they're a podcast, but like just like this is blah blah. And then like blah. I was just like, oh wow, okay, all right.
Yeah, they're not wrong. I mean,
No, they're not.
yeah, it will be interesting to see what happens now with City and Chelsea. But
Yeah.
Kev, how have you been filling your time other than reading books about Liverpool? Apparently,
Not reading them, just
Not reading them.
just noticing when other people read them.
Exactly. No, I just saw it pop on his. I that must have been buried in my like subconscious because I was like, Dan Visser, like Pep Linder's book. Yeah, okay. Yeah, and I just went back and checked. Thankfully for me, Dan doesn't like tweet a ton, so I was able to find it pretty quickly. But no, yeah, I mean it's I don't know. I haven't been doing much. Just kind of laying low, reading, running, making coffee. It's pretty much my headstone when I go out of this world. So
Cool.
Kevin hipster, got it.
That's what we'll say, Kevin hipster. The end.
what about you, Mike? What
What have you been up to,
what
Mike?
life-splitting things have
I
happened?
don't know. What are you talking about? For those who can't see, my left thumb is completely bandaged. Kevin knows I told Josh just before the show because I know that I typically talk with my hands. Yeah, so about a week and a half ago, I was splitting wood, like chopping up firewood and with a hatchet. And I was making kindling, so making smaller pieces. So not like two-handed swinging axe, like one-handed swinging. And did something really stupid and slipped and literally cut a piece of my thumb off. So got rushed to the emergency room, and they were able to get the bleeding to stop. But the instructions from them weren't great. And it actually got somewhat worse to the point that when I got it checked on about a week later, the pain was so excruciating that I passed out. And as my wife said, I started thrashing about like I was having a seizure while I was completely unconscious. But since then, we've been able to make sure that we take care of it every day. And it's a thing. But it's for those who are like, what, where, how? It's above the knuckle. So it's not like I'm like lost most of my finger. And I didn't hit the bone somehow. I have no idea. But just imagine like a 45-degree angle, just like taken right off the top of your thumb. So my
I'd
thumb,
rather not.
yeah, my thumb is now going to come to a point once it eventually heals. But lesson learned, and hopefully my example will be an example for all of the kids and scouts and crap and stuff that I do so that they don't do the same thing, because it's a very simple, stupid mistake to make.
You can now play the starting out as villain but turns into sweet old man and Christmas movie character, right?
Yeah.
You can just like you're the gruff, like, you know, misunderstood character that turns out to be a loving,
jacked up hand.
Yeah.
So
Great.
Yeah, that's sort of been what's been going on the past week and a half, in all honesty.
Think of all the cool Halloween costumes you can do now. I don't know. There's just tons of stuff you can do.
Well, like who's spending half a thought?
Go on.
No, I said think of.
This is Kevin's whole thing. I don't read the books. I just point them out to you. I don't know the characters.
Have you ever
out to you.
Have you ever thought of this? Go. That's all I do. My entire life.
Yeah. But yeah, so that happened. But we're all good. Do you guys have anything going on for Thanksgiving? Josh?
Yeah, we always have Thanksgiving in our house, our Friendsgiving tradition. But all of our friends are getting older, and it's going to be a little bit lower key, but I'm looking forward to it. And I always watch the parade. Liz makes fun of me because
What does lower key mean?
Like, it's not going to be like a full house here on Thanksgiving. It's going to be like maybe 5 people coming to visit.
That's
instead
decent.
of being like, oh, we have a whole crew here, like 12 people. And
right.
Yeah.
Those 5 people that are coming now are like, hey, hold on now. Like, am I not important? Like, what's the deal? You seem nonplussed by this.
I like that you think those 5 people will listen to this. No, they will not, I assure you.
That's fair. Yeah. No, we're doing so. Kevin and Riley, I'm not answering for you, Kev, but you guys are staying.
You can. I don't care.
They're staying in Tennessee. So Wednesday, my parents and our other brother are just coming over, and we're having like a late lunch, like white chili, like super low key. And I'm actually really looking forward to that. And then Thursday we'll go and visit my my in-laws, and they'll do the whole thing.
And you're really looking forward to that too.
Really looking.
I got you. I saved you. It's okay. Good job.
Yeah. Kev, you and Riley laying low.
Yeah, I mean, it turns out to be one of our most relaxing holidays. Because we don't go anywhere. We don't really do anything. I'm very lucky that Riley. I don't think she would disagree with me in saying that she gets a little bit of joy out of like baking the pies and like doing, the food and everything and creating the list. So she'll be captaining that. And then I'm just on, dish duty, getting in there, trying to keep up with the cooking. So, I mean, it's just wake up, parade on, then dog show. And then it's just like eat whenever the food's ready, just kind of chill. So, it'll be good.
Do you guys watch the parade like to actually enjoy it, or do you watch it ironically and just make fun of everybody that's in it?
Nah, I think there's some wholesomeness in it. I don't make fun of it. It's just like that's nice.
I can tell I'm old because every musical guest, I'm like, who the hell is that? And then like you'll randomly have like the Goo Goo Dolls, and I'm like, man, they just look bad. Like I know them, they look old.
You're like, sweet, a band I know. Oh my god, they melted. Oh no.
Speaking of Josh, was the concert good?
Oh yeah, when we were young, it was fantastic. Yeah, I had a blast. It was way too many people. I mean, that was the only negative. It's just it's so packed.
Yeah.
I'm spoiled because here in Pittsburgh we have 4 Chord Music Festival, which is like a pop punk music festival that's a lot more low key, smaller, not as big as artists. Like they might have 3 people that are like headlining that you've heard of, and the rest are kind of like smaller pop punk bands. But I love that festival because it's so low key. It's at Wild Things Park. So you're just like walking around, a bunch of vendors. You can have like as much room as you need. And then I'm at When We Were Young, and it's like, I don't want to move from this spot because if I do, I'm not going to be able to get this spot again or anywhere close to the spot. So I'm just going to be, even though there's 4 stages, I'm only going to watch these 2 stages because if I go anywhere, I'm going to miss Blink or I'm going to miss Green Day or, whatever. Yeah. So yeah, we just kind of like hung out in the same spot for like the last half of the concert. So that way we didn't miss anything.
Who was the best band?
Honestly, seeing Blink live was great because the first time I saw them live, they completely sucked. So
You
it was
mentioned
like
that, yeah.
back in the day, like Pop Disaster Tour 2012, I think. No, not even 12. It might have been 2002, 2002 or something like that. And they were like just newer band, very much just really drunk, forgot their lyrics. But then, 2023, Blink-182, they're all older. They all actually care about what they're doing a little bit more. It felt like, so watching them live now was like, oh wow, this is a good fun time. Like, and they're polished and they're fun. So that was really nice. But
Nice.
no
Mike,
effects. No effects. Sorry. Take Back Sunday is also great. There's a lot of good ones.
Mike, when was the last time you gone to like a concert?
You like you were like reading my mind. We went to a concert, air quotes, right before Halloween. Susan and I went. You wouldn't consider this a concert. There is, I'm gonna forget the
The
name of the hotel.
Ligonier big
No. We've done plenty of those. I don't count those. No, there was right before Halloween. There is a old monastery on the north side in Pittsburgh that's now a hotel. And I can't remember the name of the hotel. It's a nice hotel, but they did a string quartet. The entire thing was by candlelight, but they played Halloween music. So,
Cool.
and by Halloween music, it was like Beetlejuice and Ghostbusters, and there was like some classical music that was like mixed in. But it was really cool. Like the quartet were like younger guys, and they were all having fun with it and like joking in between songs, and like it was a blast. And we didn't take the kids because we pitched the idea to them. They're like, that sounds dumb, but they like would have loved it. There were lots of couples there, like doing the whole like selfie thing with the candles. And we were like, yeah, but it was amazing. If they ever come back and do like the candlelight classical stuff, like I'm going, because it was so much fun. And it was a cool setting.
That's
You've
cool.
never sounded older than you did.
I
just
know.
now.
I know.
Like you threw in the orchestra, you threw in candlelight, and then you threw in and the kids taking selfies. We're doing that thing.
I'm trying to think of like
A lot of couples, enjoying their life,
Yeah.
and I'm just over here.
Look at them in love. Ugh.
I'm legit trying to think of like what the last like concert I have gone to. It might have been. It was Star Lake. They don't call it Star Lake anymore. I don't even know what it's called anymore. It's an amphitheater in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. That was still Star Lake.
The
I
American
don't
Eagle
think-
or something.
I don't know. And we saw it. I think it was Goo Dolls, and it was oh crap. Who sings Mr. Jones?
Counting Crows.
Yes, it was Counting Crows and the Goo Dolls. So that was years. You might have been there with us, Kev. I think you were. And that was the last one. I haven't been to a concert since.
Hey, we need to get you to a concert.
Yeah, I know. Okay, enough about us, guys. We're still figuring out what our off season looks like. Obviously, this is the first time like the three of us have gotten together. We've obviously all chatted in our little Slack, and we're making plans. But let us know what you think. Obviously we have Thanksgiving coming up. There's lots of other people that we can talk to. As Dan mentioned, they're going to start announcing some players here before the end of the month. So within the next 2 weeks. So that'll be cool. I'd love to talk to Jeff Garner, get a sense of what's going on with the stadium. I know that they just had sort of their offsite meeting that they had at PNC Park, I believe. Where they sort of laid out all the plans for 2024. So it'd be great to pick his brain about that. We know some of the returning players like Danny Griffin. We know Rob Vincent is now back in the picture. We've talked to him a few times in the past. It'd be great to have him on to, welcome to, Bob's world. What's that like? Get his thoughts.
I mean, we could also ask him, going from academy to pro.
Yeah. There's a lot we have theories about what's actually going on here, but we won't put on our tinfoil hats for this. I have a theory. I'm not going to put my tinfoil hat on for this one. But yeah, lots of people we can talk to, lots of stuff going on. Obviously, if there's anything that you would like to hear us see or do or whatever, give us a shout. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on X or Twitter or whatever you call it. Yeah. Anything else, guys? Cool. Everybody have a safe, happy Thanksgiving. And thanks again to Dan for joining.
Cheers.
Later.